Hello, Commander. Welcome to the operational report. And this is time we're going to focus mostly on the Ukrainian side. So what has happened with the Ukrainian offensive? This offensive has been ongoing for half a year or so, from March. So April, May, June, July, August, September. So around 5-6 months, and it's pretty much went into a black hole. No, if you read newspaper or something, the mass media, you probably is not hearing much of the Ukrainian war right now. And so what's happening to the Ukrainian offensive? So the Ukrainian offensive is actually still ongoing. Surprisingly, if you might be wondering, but the is not doing much. So this is the Orikhiv sector of the Zaporizhzhia line. So this is Zaporizhzhia city, and this is the Zaporizhzhia front, and this is the Orikhiv sector, and this is also where the most of this very important offensive has been ongoing, with famous village called Robotine, Verbove, Novoprokopivka, and you probably might have heard of these locations. And the actual reality is that the front line has not really changed much in this region here. The Ukrainian forces, after capturing Robotine, have went on this massive offensive towards Verbove and trying to push south towards Novoprokopivka. However, the Russian forces kind of decided to hold their ground, and this front line have not really changed much. So what is the Ukrainians currently doing is they are actually focusing on securing the flanks, the western flank in particular, over here. So this is Robotine, and they are trying to push out in this area here to secure a more secure west flank for Robotine, and this currently is still ongoing with the in this area here. In this front line, there's only two locations that's fighting in this area and this area. This is the Verbove, and this is Robotine region, and in both sides the Russians are actually doing some offensive actions in this area here, with the Ukrainian doing much more over on this western part of Robotine, and there is some progress. They went from this line to this line in around, I don't know, 2 months. So the Ukrainian forces is still making this push, and they have deployed Leopard tanks. They deployed whatever they could, and the Russians continue to also deploy whatever they could to stop the Ukrainians. So this is the situation over at this famous uh, offensive. This is the main push of the Ukrainian counteroffensive, aiming to capture Tokmak and Tokmak, and then after that actually going for Melitopol. I think it's here. Yeah, I think this is Melitopol. Yeah, Melitopol. So the original objective of the offensive is actually to push south Tokmak, then go for Melitopol, and then cut across and basically cut the Russian land bridge to Crimea. So that is the aim. So they want to cut off this land bridge. However, yeah, this is the offensive. This as much as far as they go, and the other ones, the major offensive that the Ukrainians are actually doing is over in the Bakhmut front, and in so this is Bakhmut city, the famous Bakhmut city where the Wagner forces has fought a major battle and actually won against the Ukrainian armed forces. So the Ukrainians actually, after the loss of Bakhmut, decided to do a massive offensive, particularly actually on both sides. This was the original offensive. It was supposed to be a double pincer, and one is going around Bakhmut, the other one is going much further in this direction. However, the things went wrong for the Ukrainians, as they are unable to break through in the north. And after that, they did make some progress, especially particularly the Ukrainian forces did capture Klishchiivka, and this is actually a pretty I would say, important village for the continued offensive of the Ukrainians. After capturing Klishchiivka, they can actually continue to push, cut the highway, and continue to push to the rear of Bakhmut. And they are also making a huge push for Andriivka and Kodyomivka. However, fate have its own way. The Russian forces continue to hold the line pretty much around Klishchiivka, and with the Ukrainians mainly only successfully capture the railway line in north of Klishchiivka, whereas the Russians are still in the region over here, and the Ukrainians are unable to break through in this area. And further south is just as bad. After the Ukrainian forces captured Andriivka, they actually attacked from Klishchiivka. They captured Andriivka. They tried to push out from this area here. They also did not manage to break through. This was also kind of stuck. And over at Kudyomivka, this is the worst. The Ukrainian forces had launched some attacks against Kudyomivka. They're trying to capture this place. It did not work out at all. The Russians still have firm control over this settlement, and this pretty much is the fate of the offensive in the Bakhmut. The Ukrainian Bakhmut offensive basically have failed. The last attack that we seen of the offensive is on the 2nd of November. There was this report by the Russian Defense Ministry, but prior to that, you can see that it was 29th. Before that, it was 22nd to 23rd. Basically, the offensive at Klishchiivka has basically dissipated in the face of increasing Russian counterattack, and from a Ukrainian offensive, this has turned into a Russian counteroffensive, and this is the current situation where the Ukrainians has now turned into the back foot, trying to hold whatever gains that they have secured over the offensive period. And then we have another major offensive that just developed only recently from the Ukrainian side. Is actually over at the Kherson front. The Ukrainians have been doing all these these random raids. At least it looks random to me, where they try to land onto islands all along the Dnipro River, along the Kherson front, and eventually they did manage to have some beachhead. Particularly, we are talking about at Dachi, and then at this another bridgehead over at the opposite side of the Pridneprovsk, and then further up they have managed to have this beachhead over at Pidstepny, north of Pidstepny, and another one over at Kriniki. So in these areas here, the Ukrainian forces managed to continue to hold position around Dachi. They captured the area north of Olishki, and also at the area north of Pidstepny, and they still have a position now at Kriniki. This was this amphibious operation has basically, if I'm not wrong, if the rumors are true, caused the sacking of one Russian general, because the Russian general simply is unable to eject the Ukrainian forces from these beachhead and bridgeheads, and he has been replaced by a more competent general, and is remain to be seen how the Russians will push out the Ukrainians over in this area here. The main threat is the Ukrainians managed to break through the Russian lines, linked up all these different beachhead and bridgeheads, and actually fan out. And once they fan out, the main problem is going to be very hard to contain. Not that the Russians will not be able to destroy these forces, and not also mean that the Ukrainians will have an easy time to reinforcing them. Basically, is that the area here is huge, and the Ukrainian forces can basically hide everywhere. They can even do guerrilla style warfare, and this will create a lot of problems for the Russian forces. And so this is why the Russians have been putting a lot of effort. They have uncharacteristically dying to hold those lands. Usually Russians, in my opinion, will not hold a land if they find it very hard to defend. But this time around, things have changed. The Russians in the past 2-3 months have been very determined to hold land, and this time, and they have been sending a lot of reinforcements, and we have information of flamethrower system being used in this area here. There is the airstrike with high weightage bombs, high tonnage bombs, and the Russians are doing whatever they can to prevent this breakthrough. So otherwise, the Ukrainian offensive basically is just about this. There isn't really much left in terms of the Ukrainians, and if you look at all the other front lines, the Russians are basically pushing in the Donetsk region, over in the Velika Novosilka sector as well. Or is the Russians are mainly doing the offensive. Avdiivka offensive, no need to say, if you're following the Ukraine war, you will know this is where the Russians are making their main push. And even within the Serebrentsky forestry, the push by the Ukrainians within this area here has basically grind to a trickle, to put it that way. They previously have been doing this massive offensive for months on end within the forest region and around this Zaporizhzhia region, and however the Ukrainians did not manage to do any breakthrough. Like they were pushing within the forest against Dnipro River in the Zaporizhzhia region from Yampolivka sometime, and months before that they were pushing for Sheveno-Popivka. All of these offensive has not really worked out for the Ukrainians. It was a pretty much of a disaster. And over at the Kupiansk region, this is the other place that the Ukrainians are doing some counteroffensive, mainly in Sinkivka and just off on the eastern part of Sinkivka. And the main reason for this push, or even over at the Olyansky region, this is just to prevent the Russians from continuing their Kupiansk offensive, which is currently still ongoing. So this is the fate and the current situation with the Ukrainian counteroffensive, and the Ukrainians are basically running out of options. They are using all their Leopard tanks. They are still having a lot of long range missile. They are firing it at Sevastopol. Many of these missiles are now being intercepted. Some managed to get through. We also have not seen much of the drone attacks. Previously the Ukrainians launched a massive amount of drones against the Russian positions. Surprisingly, I have not seen much of these drones. I wonder if they are getting shot down way before they are reaching anywhere near the targets. I'm not sure. So anyway, this is just some quick operational report to give you an update about the situation with the Ukrainian offensive. It's pretty much the end, I would say, if it's not the end already. But they are still pushing over at least on the western part of Robotine, and the Ukrainian Defense Ministry continue to report that they are still on the offensive. So thank you for watching. Do press the like button, subscribe, and I will see you in the next update.